If you've tried to hire help before, maybe a VA, maybe a contractor, or maybe even a part-time employee, and it didn't quite work out, I wanted to offer you a different perspective on that experience. As difficult as it potentially was, I'm sure going through that taught you something about the experience. But the conclusion that you drew may not be the full picture. So I do hear a version of this story almost every week from business owners. Like, I hired a VA last year and it didn't work out. I actually ended up spending more time explaining things and fixing mistakes than I would have spent just doing the work myself. So I let them go, it wasn't fun, and I just went back to doing everything myself. Does that sound familiar? And the takeaway that most people land on is that the person wasn't great, or well, I just wasn't ready for a VA, or think I'm just too much of a control freak, or if I'd been more organized, if there's something else you could have done. But none of these are actually the real issue. In fact, in most of the cases I've seen over the last 20 years of hiring and managing teams, is that it normally was that there was not enough structure behind that onboarding of that person. So the person was given access to some tools and expected to just kind of figure out what they needed to do. And when that didn't happen, it felt like the person was the problem. Of course, I'm not saying that it's never the person. And of course, getting the right hire certainly is half the battle. But in most of the cases, when a hire doesn't work out, it's actually this onboarding setup that isn't quite right. So when you hire someone without a clear role, some documented processes, and a proper onboarding plan, you're basically asking them to read your mind. And the more capable you are as a business owner, the more that you've held all the pieces in your head by yourself, the harder it is for that person to actually onboard. Because what you are doing on a day-to-day basis lives in your head. The way you respond to clients, the tone you use, the order you do things in. The things you'd never forget, but someone new has no way of just intuitively knowing. And so that's not a reflection of the VA's ability, but a reflection of how the role was set up. And the part that's really disheartening to me is what happens next. That bad experience can make people question the hire, the process, or whether it's actually worth trying again. And the person that loses out the most is normally the business owner, because they don't get the support that they need. But in most cases, the real issue is simply that nobody ever showed them how to delegate properly in the first place, how to communicate clearly, how to hand over work in stages, how to create simple systems someone else can follow. Nobody really is teaching business owners this kind of thing. So you're expected to just figure it out as you go. And when you do learn the right way to do it, the whole experience can be different. So if you've hired a VA and it didn't work out, the most common reason most times is actually that it's got nothing to do with the VA. Sometimes it is, but in most cases, it's the fact that the role wasn't properly defined before they started. There may not have been an organized task list. There was no handover. There were no clear outcomes identified, and the VA was brought into a business that was still half functioning inside the business owner's head, and then expected to somehow just get up to speed. And that's truly not a fair test on whether delegation and building a team works, but it's a test of whether someone can read your mind and just jump in and pick up. And truly, there's not many people that could do that. What we see with the business owners that we work with is that it's completely different. So we take the time to define the role with you first. We then help you to extract the task list. We build the structure, and then when the VA actually starts, there's something that they're stepping into that actually makes sense. The difference isn't the person, it's what's been in place before they started. So if you wrote off delegation after a bad experience, that experience probably told you more about the setup than it did about your ability to build a team. And I wanted to say something more about this because the emotional side of this also does matter. So when there is that breakdown after you've hired someone that didn't work out, it's not just the cost of money and time that you invested, but it also starts to erode your confidence. You start second guessing whether you're the kind of person that can actually let go of things. Maybe I'm too particular, or maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist, or I'm not a team player. Those labels definitely aren't useful. Wanting something done to a high standard is actually a strength. And the issue is never about standards. The issue is more about building a system to set the person up to succeed. And the honest truth is, it's not common and not many people are teaching this stuff. So at The Doing Co, that's exactly what we do. We help you to build that system. So before the VA ever starts, We help you map the tasks, define the roles, and create that onboarding so that the VA knows exactly what to expect when they start. They're already trained on your systems and processes, and they know those high standards that you're stepping into. So for business owners with high standards where quality, trust, and consistency matter, we build in clear expectations, templates, and processes into that onboarding. So your VA doesn't step into important tasks until they've actually been shown that they can meet your standard. So that responsibility gets introduced in the right sequence, not all at once. We help you manage the people side of things as well, the accountability, attitude, HR support, and compliance. So you can stay focused on directing the work, setting priorities, and leading the business. And some of the clients express this as, I tell them what to do and everything gets handled professionally without all the drama. If you find yourself sort of holding back from getting the help you need because of this past experience, I'd really encourage you to try and separate that experience, look at what worked, what didn't work, and then look at what's possible. So we offer discovery calls, just 30 minutes, where we actually can go through what went wrong, what worked, and help you find a different solution. And we'll also be transparent with you about whether, in fact, a VA does work for your business. So what I always say is, if you're serious about growing your business, you do need to bring on team. The sooner that you can kind of move through this and get the help you need, I really encourage you to do that. So feel free to check in with us. There's a link below.